We are responsible in our industry for recharging ourselves. The idea that I actually need to break away and go do fun things so that I'm actually better at business, it's really counterintuitive. Welcome back, real estate agents. It is 2024 and we are off to a tremendous start this year here at the RMG Agent Podcast, and we are so thrilled that you're along for the ride with us. Today, we are going to be going over rest, recreation, and retooling. This is kind of a 2.0 of our conversation last week, so if you didn't listen to that one, jump on. We talk about burnout, we talk about depletion, we talk about disillusionment, all kinds of things that we want to help make sure that you either recover from or you don't get into this year. As always, if you go to rmgagentpodcast.com, you can reach out to us there. You can see our blog, you can interact with us, get our different resources that we have available to you. And so we're excited that you're along for the ride. Speaking along for the ride, the guy who already called shotgun on the show, Jake Bartlett.
Hey guys. Yeah, this is going to be a really awesome episode. Very excited for it. I think it's going to be fun. We're going to talk a lot more about us personally, I think, on this one, because I think it's practical. One thing you do need to know from the last episode, I think, is kind of the three things that you get to choose if you are in the disillusionment portion, or which is relationships, habits, and education, and we're going to rehash those as well.
Right.
So we're going to talk about what do you do to recharge.
Yeah, it's a really, I was excited about this one because last week we talked about all the challenges. This week we get to talk about all the solutions. So it's going to be fun. We are responsible in our industry for recharging ourselves, right? And maybe just even in this lifetime, we have to continue to refill and recharge. And everybody knows that. The issue is that there's a little bit of complexity that comes along with staying recharged, because we have to actually figure out how we as an individual recharge. And we also need to figure out which one of the different buckets that are available to us will recharge us based off of our current circumstances. Yeah,
so the way I look at this is that if I want to be the best, husband, best father, best realtor, best agent for my clients, leader, any of these things, I owe it to all of those people to recharge so that I can be the best that I possibly can be.
Yeah, and a lot of times, what we hear is when somebody is depleted, people want to go on a vacation. That is I just need to go sit on a beach for a couple weeks, and that's the direction we go. And sometimes that's actually the answer. But what we're going to explore today is what are the different options that are available to us, because when that's not the answer, it's actually even more disheartening, right? You spend money that maybe is on the edge of what you should be spending to go get recharged in a way that doesn't recharge you. And that becomes real problematic. So we're going to talk about that.
Yeah. So people think just rest, right? Like, I just need more sleep. And then you do that for a month and you're still in the same spot. And so that's not always the answer. And for me, it's usually not the answer. I have one, maybe two superpowers in my life. And one of them is that I operate fully at like 5.5 hours of sleep.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah. But so rest is usually not my issue. Also, like, if we go sit on the beach, within 30 minutes of looking at the ocean or looking at the pool, I'm bored out of my freaking mind.
Yeah.
And you could ask my wife this. That's like, so rest is very rarely my issue, but when it is, like, I am exhausted and I will sleep for like 12 hours.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that's available to us. So let's just get into it. There's three different buckets that we have to be able to recover, to be able to recharge ourselves, and then show it back in our business in a way that we're ready to hit our goals, to be on mission. And that is that we have rest. That is sometimes what's necessary. We have recreation that's necessary, and we have retooling that is necessary. Several years back, I found myself in a place where I was just continuing to get more and more depleted. And as the year went on, it just got worse and worse and worse. And so what I would do is I decided, like, what I need to go get more knowledge. I need to go to more conferences. I need to get more industry knowledge. And so I was on the road at least every month going to take in knowledge. And every time I would come back from a conference, I felt more depleted and more depleted and more depleted. And I stopped for a second, and I think I talked to my wife, and she said, well, maybe that's actually not what you need to recharge. Maybe you need to do something else. And so what ended up happening is I ended up going and doing something really, really physically hard. I went and did an endurance race, and as hard as it was and as depleting as it was, I woke up the next day ready to take over the world. And it was the first time that the light bulb went off, and I realized I am responsible not just for recharging, but I'm responsible for figuring out, in this scenario that I'm in, what do I need to do to recharge?
Yeah, and I know you pretty well, and I know that your brain, when you're in work mode, doesn't really shut off, and so resting, going to education, stuff, like, you're still thinking about whatever's, maybe depleting you at that moment, and so going and doing something hard, like an endurance race where you're running for, or swimming or biking 12, 18, 20 hours, is possibly the only way that your brain will shut off.
Yeah, that's right. So for people right now that are in real estate that are feeling depleted, we want to just jump into these things. So let's talk a little bit about rest, because sometimes the answer is rest. So rest shows up in a couple different ways. Number one, it seems really simple, is actually just flat out sleep. And sleeping is not about sleeping more hours all the time. It's actually about having excellent sleep. And so as a result, I actually track my sleep every night. And what I know that I need to do is I need to hit certain numbers for my deep sleep and certain numbers for my REM sleep. And then for me, a total number of hours between those and light sleep. If I can accomplish those three things, then I have good rest. What I need to do to be able to have good rest is to do a handful of things. Number one is because I track this, I know this to be true personally, but this is from the research, and that is, if you drink too many alcoholic drinks too close to bed, what happens is a lot of people will do that because it takes the edge off so they can get to sleep. But what they don't realize is around 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, when the effects of alcohol wear off, your body re-triggers partially or fully into wake-up mode. And what that does is it completely erodes your REM and your deep sleep for that night. So if I have a couple of glasses of wine, I need to have them at or before dinner, so that by the time I get to time for bed, the effects of that has already worn off. And if you drink more than that and farther into the night, you're susceptible to being able to sleep for any number of hours and not actually being rested.
Yeah, and I am definitely one of those people that if I drink a little too much, a little too late, like, I will be up at 3 or 2 or 4.
Yeah.
And I know, and it's happened for so long now that I just know that if I'm making that sacrifice, I am giving up on my rest.
Right. Another thing that I've learned about rest, especially with business people, is business people sometimes have a habit of reading a business book right before bed. There are a few people I think that can do that, and they can do it successfully. But as much as you're trying to grow yourself, if you're depleted and you're trying to retool, what happens is, if you're trying to retool right before bed, you're sending your life some mixed signals. The sun's going down, it's the end of your day, your body's trying to prepare to rest and recover and rejuvenate. But you're putting into a mode of you're trying to stimulate thought and growth. And a lot of people actually can't shut their mind down if they start doing those things before bed. So even though you've maybe built a habit of that's when you go and you read your business books, if it's impacting your sleep, you need to find a different time to be able to do that.
I know one of the other things that it helps me with rest, and specifically with sleep, is I've tracked it all the way back to when I have to go to bed, or when I have to start turning the TV off, when I have to start drinking water instead of drinking whatever. It's usually you're starting a few days before to start to see the effects.
Yeah, absolutely. So be intentional, just flat out, about sleep. Another one is just the environment that you sleep in. Is it dark? Right? You can put pieces of tape over little lights and things like that in your room. Make sure it's dark, and typically make sure it's cold.
So let's go to recreation.
Ooh, recreation. So this one I think is this is like the dark horse. This is the secret sauce for so many people, especially in sales, that we discount, because recreation, it's sometimes it's like guilt inducing. Right? The idea that I actually need to break away and go do fun things so that I'm actually better at business, it's really counterintuitive. And so recreation, if you think about the word, it means to recreate yourself. And that's actually what recreation does. It has this resetting ability, or this ability to recreate you. And there's a difference between active and passive recreation. And a guy by the name of Mihai Csikszentmihalyi wrote a book called Flow and a whole bunch of other books. He was a professor, a brilliant man. But one of the things he found in his research was that passive recreation does not recover people. A real typical passive recreation would be is watching TV. So if you watch TV as a way of maybe shutting your brain down, that if you do it too much, it's actually just like junk food. It's really not healthy. It doesn't fall under rest or recreation. If you do it a smaller amount, it can fall under rest, right? It can be this time where you kind of decompress and you zone out. But anything like that that's passive, like it's happening to you, that's not active recreation. So things like climbing a mountain, like sailing or shooting guns or riding horseback or riding bikes or even going for a walk, all of those things are active recreation. And that is the kind of thing that has the power to start to reset and to refill you.
Yeah. Also things like working out, working out is something that I do for recreation, golf, hunting, skiing, anything that, gets my blood flowing and maybe challenges me a little bit. I went to a conference recently, and one of the things that they talked about was when you lift weights, you're actually teaching your brain to deal with stressful things, which transitions into business and dealing with stressful things, right? Like you don't want to hurt yourself working out, which I recently did. I'm all better now. But stressing your body minimally so that you can help be better in your business because you can handle stress better.
Yeah. I think what a lot of more assertive behavioral styles have learned is that there needs to be some level of extremity. Not everybody's this way, but a lot of people that are in sales, there needs to be some level of extremity to what you do to recreate. So if you're going to go even do something like a walk and you look outside and it's nasty and it's horrible and the weather's terrible, go for a walk. The fact that it's a little bit miserable will cause you to have some sort of recreation, like a higher level of actual like recreational advantage, because you going out and coming home and being cold and wet and all that stuff, that is that shift that leans it more into recreation.
And you usually sleep better after it too.
That's right. Yep. So even things like, it's really popular right now to take cold, ice baths and things like that. So that's great. It shocks your system. It does something. What I would say is if you're doing an ice bath and you're not working out, okay, like you're doing a hard thing for 3 minutes, you should probably go work out and do some more hard things too, right? Because that little bit is going to maybe be helpful, but you probably need to extend that out a little bit.
What if you only do an ice bath for 3 seconds?
That would be pretty normal.
That's not my ice. I haven't got to the ice bath thing yet. Maybe next time. So any other things that we should talk about as far as on recreation?
Yeah, so I think that this goes back to what we talked about last week, which is you need to stop and think and ask yourself the question, what recharges me when it comes to recreation? My wife gets incredibly recharged by reading a book. She really, if she has quiet time and she has time to read a book and take a bath, something like that, she's going to be recharged. For me, the closer to a near-death experience that I just had, the more I come back just feeling alive and ready to take over the world, as dysfunctional as that sounds.
I will add on to this recreational thing. The recreational portion of it is, for me, relationships and habits are really important in those things. The people that I can do some of those hard things recharges me. I am recharged by relationships as well.
Sure.
So if I can go shoot guns with you, or we can go skiing, or, as long as you don't get hurt again, the relationships that I can do the hard things with, it really helps me as well. Habits come big into play when we start talking about putting things into your calendar when you're already feeling crazy stressed.
Yeah, you're overwhelmed by work. You wake up and you feel like I just have to work all the time. Like if I'm going to survive or if I'm going to hit my goals, I just have to work all the time. The challenge with that is if you're not recovering, your work is getting more and more watered down. The level of focus, the level of intensity, the level of like emotional stability that you bring to the table, it just lessens over time. And so if somebody has the ability to rest and to recreate and to retool, the amount of time that they give to their business activities is going to be far more potent than the same person who's not doing those things well.
Yeah, it comes back a little bit to not perfectly the 80-20 principle, but when you're doing your activities more efficiently because you are recharged, you get an exponential reward from that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because this also, all of this wraps up into your ability to calendar, because if I'm going to rest, if I'm going to recreate, and I'm going to retool, which we'll talk about in a second, I have to build those into the calendar. And so all of a sudden I wake up and I have a limited number of days that I have to work or a limited number of hours because of my rest, recreation, and retooling that I'm doing. So now I'm doing rest, recreation, retooling, and I'm driving my business. And if I do those 4 things really well year after year, I don't get depleted, right? I can rip and tear and do awesome stuff. And that's playing the long game, right? If you're just grinding it out and you get totally, depleted and decide you need to go do something different in a different industry after a year, you doing that over and over and over again, you're not going to get as far in life, and you're also not going to be as happy as the person who's over here controlling their calendar, going on exploration, adventures and exploring and resting and going to conferences and all the rest.
I get the privilege of talking to a lot of people in my role that, are either looking to join our team, or I am trying to recruit them or actively recruiting them. And I can see this in their resume, right? Like I can ask questions around, every 2 years you keep moving industries. Why is that? What happens? Well, like the first year I learned, the second year I crushed it. I got all of these awards.
Right.
I'd hit my ceiling that I had thought of, and I was depleted. I had dissolution on what I could do next, and there was no plan for me. So my new plan was I'm going somewhere else.
Yeah, that's totally right. So we talk about resting well, and that's going to be sleeping. That's going to be having downtime, whatever that looks like in addition to sleep. Then we have recreation. Let's figure out what you do to actively recreate. And I should say this too, with the book Flow, the author talks about how for your brain to recover and to be stimulated, it doesn't need to shut down. It actually needs to switch. So when we talk about being in business, we talk about not doing switch tasking or multitasking, right? Because that's not effective or efficient. When we talk about recovery, your brain needs to do that. So you can work really hard all day in something that's mentally taxing, and you can shift over and do a puzzle. Right? And then you can shift over and do a crossword, and then you can shift over and do something else. The fact that your brain transitions to different things like that falls under recreation. So if somebody is not as like my wife is not, she does not recover through physical activity the same way I do. But if she's able to shift her mind around, she recovers very, very well. Right? Nice. So we talk about that. And then the next one we talk about is
retooling.
So this last year, what I found was the thing that I had to go back to again and again and again to not get depleted wasn't rest. I was doing a good job of that. It wasn't recreation. I was doing a good job of that. It was that with the changes in the environment, the pressures of leadership and sales and all of the things that happen in real estate, I found a tremendous amount of just revitalization through retooling and learning.
Yep. So what were some of the things that you used to retool?
So I made a decision many, many years ago that if I need something, I'm willing to jump on a plane.
Okay.
And so this year, some of the best retooling that I did was actually going to masterminds, going to different events, going to different trainings. So if there was anybody that I respected, and this is kind of my default, if things get hard, I force myself to go into learning mode. Mm-hmm. And that really paid off this year because the number of conversations that I had that led to really great business decisions were tremendous this year. And when you're in business and things are hard, when a hard thing happens and you think, oh man, 2 weeks ago I had this conversation. I talked to somebody who just went through this. I know what to do. That makes breakthrough so much quicker than always being on your heels, right? If you're always having something happen to you and now looking around for answers, that's better than the alternative. But if you can actually proactively go out and constantly retool, that's awesome.
I will second that. Some of the best retooling things were at conferences or masterminds for me, getting to maybe see people that were just a step ahead of me, maybe a couple steps ahead of me, and getting to learn from them and take pieces of their business and maybe ask questions that make them think about their business differently, because we all learn in those situations. If you cannot jump on a plane because you can't afford to jump on a plane right now, like go back to that relationship aspect. Who in your brokerage, who on your team, who outside of your brokerage or your team, like, do you have relationships that are in around where you're wanting to be that you can go be around, have real estate conversations? One of the things that happened to me, 9 years into my business, I'm almost 17 years into real estate, 9 years in, I switched brokerages. Not because I, needed, a greener pasture, but because I needed new relationships, I needed new habits, and I needed the education. And I dove in that first year on those three things, and I doubled my business that first year at the new brokerage just based on those three things.
Yeah, so I would say if you're in a place right now where you need retooling, that's like you need to go out and get and learn. If you can go to conferences, go to them. And what I mean by that is a lot of times people won't jump on a plane because they look at it and they say it's expensive. It's not that they can't technically afford it, is that they're not betting on themselves to be able to go there and come back and make an ROI, a return on investment, off of the trip. I would challenge the mindset and say, no, that mindset fundamentally needs to change, because the most successful people in our industry, if you watch what they're doing, that's what they're doing, right? But if you actually can't afford it, right, which is like that's a reality. Podcasts, right? You could fly here and listen to Jake and I put on a class, or you can listen to this podcast until you can do that, right? There's so many people out there right now across business, personal finance, all kinds of things that are dropping great content in podcasts and books, right? Podcasts and books are either free or inexpensive. And I would challenge you, like the equivalent of 4 books a month is a very doable thing. So if you're taking in, let's see, 4 books a month would be the equivalent of about 24 hours of content between podcasts and books. If you're doing that, you are setting the stage to continue to refill yourself in this area of retooling.
I will reiterate what you said about the mindset aspect of this and going to conferences. And we talk at every one of our sprint planning. We start with our business planning with our people of be the person that takes the information and uses it to change their business, right, and not the person that sits back and just has it thrown at them and never changes, right? Yeah. You want to take that information and actually do something with it.
Yeah, the hard thing about retooling is that retooling is it's learning for the sake of doing. Mm-hmm. And so when you look at, when you read books and you listen to podcasts and all that, and it's it's entertainment for you, that's great. It's probably one of the healthiest entertainments you can have, but that's not the point. The point is doing that for action. So again, going back to like our last podcast, when we talk about retooling, we ask those questions. We ask, is it a person, is it a habit, or is it education that I need to focus on to be able to get to my breakthrough?
Yep. So once you have identified what it is, now you have to act.
Now you have to act. Rest, recreation, retooling, you have to take action, right? And that's hard if you're disillusioned and if you're depleted. But just know that you don't have a path out of disillusionment or depletion without one or multiple of these different avenues. And so I get it. You might be in a place where this is hard. And by the way, the amount of limiting beliefs or you don't understand my situation that I've heard is over the years is just tremendous. The problem is you're fighting for your limitations. And as long as you keep winning that battle, you're losing the war.
Yeah. So we'll go back. I'll go back to one of the things we talked about really early in the podcast, which was this is a career, right? Like this is a long-term thing. And if you want it to be a long-term thing, and it's going to be, you are going to be in this at some point of your career, probably multiple times.
Multiple times, yeah.
So get comfortable with working through these things and making that breakthrough, getting the rest you need, recharging yourself, recreating, and retooling so that you can move to the next phase of your real estate career.
Yeah, the good news is that over the course of time, with intentionality, you'll catch it sooner or sooner. Right, so we talk about depletion, like running out of gas. You can get to the place to where you look at your gas tank, right? Your emotional gas tank, your business gas tank, and you're like, oh, I'm at a half a tank, and I should probably just go ahead and fill up now, as opposed to running that thing on fumes over and over and over again. So it can be a very, very long period of time before you hit empty if you're actively paying attention to this.
Awesome. Well, I think this was as good as I was hoping it to be. I think it was a really fun topic for us. And our next one, I had nothing to do with this title.
That says the best title. It's so good.
Check out our next episode, which is going to be "Oops, I Did It Again." Not being your own client.
It's going to be a good one. Guys, we really care about you, and we want to see you guys rest and recreate and retool so that you can continue on in this career that you love. Take care, and we appreciate you being here.